Welcome to the ASIS Economist Board, where the ASIS team discusses the current economic environment as it relates to industrial production. Each of our industrial models incorporates data from approximately 18 to 20 economic indices, with the data going back over 20 years. So in this video and in the 7 related subsector videos, we'll dig into what's driving each of our forecasting models of industrial production and then relate it to what we're seeing in the real world. More importantly, where we see things headed and why. I'm John Nelson from M&A, and I'm joined today by Keith Prather of Armada. How you doing today, Keith?
Doing great. Looking forward to this. It's gonna be fun.
All right. So are you ready to get going?
Let's dive in.
All right. So let's dive into the overall industrial production for manufacturing forecast. Let's go ahead and bring that up now. Look at that. It didn't jump all over the screen like I thought it might. So we'll advance it. And here we go. So industrial production for manufacturing, if you were to compare it to our last forecast from August, you can see it takes essentially the same shape. We're still looking rather, in generic terms, rather flat over the next several months. A little bit of a decline, but not a great decline. If you're looking at the scale of things, something from when you look at the index sitting right at 100, that's your baseline. We're only dropping a few points, especially into early February of next year, where we're down, approximately 3 points, down to about 97. So that's what I saw. That's where the model takes us. Keith, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so a couple things. What I saw specifically as month over month is I see a little bit of deterioration, kind of late in 2022 and early in 2023, which is a little bit surprising. Now, the one thing about IPMAN, which is what we refer to it as, is this includes both durable manufacturing and non-durable manufacturing. And there's a lot of speculation that over the next, anywhere from 2 to 3 quarters, probably get to the middle part of 2022, that there's going to be a little bit of deceleration in some of the spending that we've seen, like over the last 2 years, where we had consumer spending really heavy, a lot of general merchandise, a lot of people investing in stuff for their homes. And some of that's going to fall off as we see the services sector really start to rebound. And that's a little bit of what's playing out here. Obviously, and you'll hear this theme throughout, but there's still some significant global supply chain challenges. I know we're sick of hearing about it, but they are very real. So we saw microchip shortages, and we're now starting to see shortages in, things like steel, aluminum, even some copper products, definitely in the plastics arena, and that's slowing down output and production. And that's
I saw something this morning, even on diapers. Parents are having a hard time getting diapers.
Absolutely, yeah. Materials all over the world just being slow, really, to get back in cycle. And we'll talk a little bit about inventories and some of that, because I think that's going to play a key role. But for now, we're just seeing this flat trend, which again, it's still growing. It's still, not a bad curve, which I think we'll see in a couple slides, but it definitely has flattened for us over the last month or so.
Sure. Yeah, I'll put that into, here's our next slide. This kind of shows it over the 20 years. Now the scale here is a lot different than what we had before. We kind of cut the bottom off, if you will. We're going from 80 to 110 on this, and you can kind of see that trend looks a little bit more exaggerated, the downslope. But overall, it doesn't deviate all that far from the overall trend line over the last 20 years. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and again, and I do think there are several sectors that are pulling it down. And a lot of those are right now subject to microchip shortages and some real chronic shortages of key products and materials. But I do think, John, that once we start to see some deliveries of some of these products, and we've got by last count, we've got over 600,000 TEUs, so these containers sitting off the U.S. coasts, and as those deliver, and we process those products, we know that in the manufacturing sector, that there are a lot of products that are sitting waiting on a single component once they get that single component, those products will fly off the assembly line floors, and it'll become finished output that will be, you know, recognized by the models. So I do think that this data will change a little bit over the next 30 to 60 days as these products start to deliver, and as what we see as industrial production, as it starts to go up a little bit. So I do think this curve will change a little bit. But you know, generally it's still going to be in that range that we saw kind of from, you know, 2012 through about 2019 prior to the pandemic, and we're going to get back in that range and probably stay there for a while.
Now, let me throw you kind of a little bit of a curveball. When I was reading an article this morning, said that, you know, the unemployment numbers came out, they put them at 4.8%. And I was kind of surprised that the article was taking a negative view of 4.8% employment. I'm thinking that's close to full employment. Any thoughts on how that is affecting industrial production?
Well, I mean, we do have significant labor shortages throughout the industrial sector. We do know that. We know the manufacturers are still scrambling for workers. But I did see less growth in manufacturing in September, which is basically what that data was showing. And there are a lot of companies who, because of these shortages of component parts, and they just don't need the headcount. And so they're not hiring as many as they could. There's also a lot of automation and you know, a lot of workarounds for not being able to find the right qualified talent, you know, to man some of the more advanced machines that we're using today. So there is a lot of that. Prior to the pandemic, though, we were running unemployment down in the threes. So we were 3.6, 3.8, which historically was some of the lowest we had seen in decades. You know, so at 4.8, yeah, we're still a little high. But I mean, we still have a little over 10.4 million job openings in the US, and just not enough people coming off the sidelines to take those jobs.
Mhm.
So a low unemployment rate is pretty much expected. I think what we're watching right now is the opposite end of the spectrum. And one other thing I would throw in on this is that we did see the wages and cost of wages really start to go up. And over the last year, average wage gain across all industries has been somewhere around 8 to 9%. Let me look and see. I actually have a statistic here I can pull out if I can just get my act together and find it. But for the manufacturing sector, you know, wage growth has been somewhere around 5%. So outpacing inflation by a full 1 to 2 percentage points. And that's one of those inflationary pressures that we don't see come back off as soon as the economy kind of gets back in cycle. So as soon as the global supply chain looks like it's sort of back to quote normal, people don't go out and fire workers and hire them back at, you know, $2, $3, $4 an hour cheaper than what they were, you know, paying them at during this period of time. So
Sure.
we don't see that inflation come back off afterwards. So that's going to be something enduring that I know the manufacturing sector is going to have to deal with.
Okay. One other look at this of the historicals, the year over year. Of course, you have the 2020 numbers look really crazy off the chart, but 2021 is our red. You can see here, that kind of shows how close it is in some ways to some of the other years. In fact, besides this tail off, it kind of gave me the impression a little bit of 2014. Any thoughts?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. Yeah, 2018 and 2014 were both fantastic years. And that's, you know, this helps me at least see that, you know, it's not a dismal science here. It's, you know, we're actually doing pretty well compared to most years. So 14 was an odd year for us because we had a surge in the US dollar. And that surge in US dollar really kind of changed some of the dynamics in the economy and the way we were procuring products and where we were sourcing them. So it's interesting. We started to see companies really beef up on inventories at that time. And so we got a little bit of a surge in the year. 2018, you know, people were saying it was one of the best years they'd ever seen in their careers. And we just saw a lot of demand really start to build. And so it was a good year. So to see right now, see current, you know, industrial production near those levels says a lot. And it does, you know, speak to just how strong demand is. We just can't get the supply chain intact enough and get enough people working to be able to get it up where it should be, which is probably back up around 2018 levels.
I gotcha. All right, well, I'm gonna stop sharing. Keith, thanks for that perspective. For our subscribers, we'll have several other videos that are getting into our subsectors. And we'll talk about that. For those who were just looking at the IPMAN, we hope to see you again next month. Thanks
That's
a
right.
bunch.
Should remind them, yeah, 60-day free trial. No strings attached, no credit card required. Just if you're just checking this out, go look at the other 8 sectors. They're actually pretty interesting. You see a lot of volatility, but we cover the biggest sectors in durable manufacturing. So go give it a shot. Go check it out.
Okay, thanks.